Should be.
Hey everyone, it's Wendy here again with Raise the Vibe initiative, and I am so excited to introduce Mr. Robert Edward Grant today on the show. Robert, you've been so gracious with accepting to come on, and I really appreciate that. I'm really excited to dive into the divine design with you today.
So happy to be here with you. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Yeah, of course. So, I did sort of mention a little bit about your body of work. I did an introduction for the guests prior, but maybe
hmm
tell us a little bit about what you're up to right now and kind of, what you're doing.
Well, I definitely, every day is very different for me. I have a number of different interests across many different fields, but predominantly I spend a lot of time in my life in the healthcare industry and ranging across many different aspects of healthcare from pharmaceuticals and medical devices and sound healing technologies all the way through to fintech. And one of my companies is the second largest consumer lender in healthcare in the United States now. I'm happy to say one of my companies is going public next week, and very excited about that on the New York Stock Exchange. And so I've founded several companies, but before I became an entrepreneur, I guess I started out as an entrepreneur, but then I went to become a professional manager for many years. And I was CEO of Bausch and Lomb Surgical and president of Allergan, which is a big pharma company, president of Allergan Medical. And I got to be, involved and help lead the commercialization of several products that became kind of household names. And that part of my life was a fun and exciting part of my life. But I think at that arc of my life, the message was, I'm here to help you realize your ideal, whatever your ideal is, in a possessive sense. And now I think the arc of my life is more about helping myself and others as well to realize that they are already ideal. So it's the same words. It's just no apostrophe it's you are, rather there's an apostrophe in it rather than just your Y-O-U-R. And I think that's probably been a big shift. I've been very much involved in mathematics. I'm referred to as a polymath very often. I wrote a book called PolyMath. I wrote a book called Philomath that has been luckily right at the top of the charts on Amazon for best-selling books in mathematics and geometry. And I love math and geometry. I see it as a language of the universe, language of God. And I am very much an artist, and I've been getting more deeply into poetry and everything lately as well. So I'm not just one thing, I guess. And I think I probably resisted being categorized as, one thing in society, whether you're a plumber or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. I've kind of resisted that my entire career.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about that quite a bit, and I
Mhm.
can very much relate. In that it's so hard to put ourselves in a box. And when I was doing your bio, I thought, boy, he's a little bit of everything. But I think when we open ourselves up, it's just there's so many things that can interest us, and we can really just have so many aspects of ourselves. Um,
Mhm.
so I thought that was very interesting. And then I also thought, um, it's interesting that you're kind of doing this work where you're enlightening a lot of people in a lot of ways, and you seem to be really knowledgeable and kind of on your spiritual path, but then part of your other stuff is sort of in the pharmaceutical world.
Mhm. Mhm.
Had mentioned something, or I believe I read something, that you felt that there needs to be some shifts happening in the
Mhm.
pharmaceutical
Yeah.
industry, and that it's really no longer serving us. Could you talk a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah. I think, it's interesting because, whenever I tell people that I was a pharma CEO, they're like, whoa, it's like Darth Vader. You can hear the dun, 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 the music in the background. And I think my entire time in the pharmaceutical industry, I always kept thinking that I could help change it.
Right.
And then finally I realized that it's just systemically rotten. It's a systemically rotten industry. I hate to say this. And it's just so much driven on money. And that's really what it's all about, and raising prices. Here we are in the United States. We have one of the worst healthcare systems in the world. We always think it's the best. I'm sorry, I've lived in 9 countries. That's complete bullshit. It's one of the worst healthcare systems I have ever participated in. It's by far the worst I've participated in. And it's unfortunate because it didn't become bad because of the doctors. It became bad because of all of the people that came in to make money off of the arbitrage of healthcare. And that's, you can draw a direct line correlation to the cost of healthcare in the United States and the number of administrators that are administering healthcare. When it was just doctors, it was a lot easier because, doctors couldn't necessarily have bad customer service. Otherwise, those patients wouldn't come back to them. Right. And now that there's all kinds of third-party payer systems, it's through the third party that all the fuckery happens. And that's basically what's happened. I mean, now you go to CVS to get a prescription, and up until very recently, it was always cheaper just to pay cash. And often the copay was more expensive than the cash pay for the exact same drug. So what's the point of the copay? I mean, it was just a scam. The whole thing is a scam. Our healthcare system in the United States unfortunately, it's a scam, and it doesn't serve us. So I can speak more freely and more openly about it now. But I think it's, what happened with COVID vaccine is very unfortunate, right? It's very, very unfortunate because now we're starting to learn the truth of exactly, that there are side effects. The people that were resisting it were right. And, and then when we see the things like Project Veritas and what happened with Pfizer, I called out the CEO of Pfizer on my LinkedIn. I have a lot of followers in the pharmaceutical industry because I was a pharma CEO, pharma president for a long time. And I called him out and I said, why are you not even responding to the fact that this guy was talking about gain of function, everything? You're not even saying that he was an employee or not. Come clean. And I just think it's systemically a messed up industry. And I think it's just too much driven on money.
Well, what do they say? I mean, I really feel like this is a time of disclosure. There's so many things that are coming out and people are starting to see, okay, you know what? We may not have recognized this before, but I feel like a lot of things are very much in our face now that we really don't have a choice. We really have to start looking at some of these things. And you had also mentioned sound medicine. Now, I had Dr. Joe, a friend of mine, on just prior, and he was actually talking about that. And he figures that this is kind of the direction of where medicine is going to be going, as we're sort of in this evolutionary process. Where do you think things are going to lead if we're moving into kind of like I'm gonna call it a very positive timeline, evolved timeline, but how do you see that we could, evolve in that perspective?
Well, I mean, I think I'd like to take the advice of Buckminster Fuller, who was a famous geometer, architect, luminary in the 20th century, who built, all these buckyball type structures. One of them was Epcot Center, right, in Disney in Florida. And I think, his approach to innovation was that you'll never be able to achieve meaningful change by attacking or fighting the incumbency. The only way to achieve meaningful change is by establishing the new. You can't fight the old. Right. And I think that's where I finally came to the realization. I'm like, I can't fight the old. But what I can do is I can help build a new. And I think we're facing this kind of problem right now across many aspects of society. One is certainly healthcare. Another is education systems. Another is government in general, right? So where we have these self-appointed arbiters of truth is where we have the biggest challenge in society right now. The education system believes that they're the self-appointed arbiter of what is true and what is not true. And yet science is changing every day. the last thing I saw, was there was an article that came out in I think it was Popular Mechanics or Scientific American that basically said, the universe might actually be 26.7 billion years old now, which is exactly twice as long, almost twice as long as the 13.7 billion that everyone had thought that it was. So here we go. I mean, that's a major shift. That's a major shift from where things were. And yet we all talk about science and speak of science as if it's fixed and immutable. It's not. It constantly changes. I grew up thinking that cholesterol was bad for me until I went to get a physical a few weeks ago and found out that there is no incidence whatsoever, no correlation that can be drawn between cholesterol and heart disease. Another fuckery that happened from the pharmaceutical industry. So, like, I've been taking statins that had muscle pain because of the statins for probably 20 years now. What in the hell? It's all a money machine. So I kind of think, the best way to deal with it is I could certainly go and fight and try to increase exposure on these types of things, or rather, you just start building the new. And I think part of building the new is the technological advances. I think this is going to be true in education, true in government, true in lots of areas. And on building the new in healthcare, I think a sound-based technology, that's been my dream for a long time, is where things are going to go in the future. Whether it was Raymond Rife or whether it was, the sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce or Nikola Tesla or even Einstein, referring to the future of medicine being sound technologies. I fundamentally believe that. And I believe that one day we'll be able to play, your DNA like keys on a piano keyboard and find the exact right harmonic frequency associated with being you.
Wow. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing for sure. Yeah, well, I think they're talking a lot about I guess in some of my inner circles, they're talking a lot about med beds. They're talking a lot about sound medicine. They're talking about, various other forms of sort of almost like an energy medicine. And that's really something that we have not integrated.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Planet's idea of what that looks like. So I think it will be very interesting to see some of these new ways of being. And I think a lot of it too, what I have found is the understanding about health is if you're allowing somebody else to dictate to you what your health is,
Mm-hmm.
you're oftentimes not going to be the healthiest, I believe. I think that we become a product of what we believe, and we really need to be able to code ourselves with our own health. And I do believe that that's possible.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I guess on that, the next place, gosh, I've got a lot of different notes here, but the next place I'd like to maybe walk into, I entitled the show the Divine Design. And I've heard you talk with Richard Rudd on the gene keys, which I've been diving into myself quite a
Mm-hmm.
bit.
Mm-hmm.
Also, where the geometry kind of plays in that, and then how does that sort of affect the DNA, and how does that work? What does that look like? And I'll be transparent. I'm very interested in the ascension process. Is there a correlation between all of this?
Oh, absolutely. So I believe that we are going into a new sort of phase around the world. I think a lot of people believe this as well. It stems from, first and foremost, the notion that we come to the realization that what got us here won't get us there. So I remember when I was at Allergan, there was a management book that was supposed to teach leadership by a guy by the name of Marshall Goldsmith, and it was called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." And if there were ever a time where I think that saying applies to humanity, it would be now. What got us here will not get us to where we need to go. And that's true with our infrastructure. That's true with our monetary systems. That's true with so many things that are clearly now broken. And in a way, those broken aspects are highlighted because of the fact that the world's degree of complexity is increasing so quickly, it's starting to exceed, seemingly, mankind's ability to deal and manage that complexity. And so this is kind of the challenge I think we're facing right now. So I believe that in order to combat this, and in order to, build a future that's sustainable, I think mankind is going through an evolutionary change.
Absolutely.
You might even say it's a revolutionary change.
Well,
And this is accompanied also by an increase in our own perception of being able to perceive higher dimensions. And I also believe that translates into our DNA. Our DNA holds a particular frequency, right? And as we go through this process, that frequency will continue to rise and increase.
and so it's to be said, I guess, and prophesized even the planet itself, right? Everything is interlinked.
Well, you can't change our DNA without the planet's DNA also changing.
Well, and that's again that interconnectedness piece, right? I mean,
Correct.
And how are can you explain that in a formula? I don't know, maybe not, but very interesting.
What's the formula for this? I think it comes down to, first and foremost, it depends on how you perceive the world. If you perceive the world as a difficult place that's unwieldy and makes you sad, then you will live in this world that is a difficult place and have a life that you're experiencing constant degrees of unwieldiness and sadness. Because whatever we look for is what we find.
Absolutely.
If we're looking for the bad, we'll find the bad. If we're looking for the good, we'll find the good. It's like, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you'll be right.
100%. Absolutely. But I think, there's a process of kind of also learning how to go in and navigate and become mindful of the things that we are perceiving and the thoughts that we are having. And I believe that that's a big part of what, what this is about is sort of learning to come out of the mind, so to speak, and coming back into kind of the heart space where I believe we sort of have all of the knowledge there already, and it's it's a truth frequency.
I agree with you.
This integration piece is interesting. I'm seeing it, maybe again, to come back to what you've just said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And so, I would say that my circle are all probably very similar in vibration to myself. But I mean, I am seeing this on a massive scale where people are just like waking up like nobody's.
Yeah, totally. It's so true.
It's like, we're not the crazy ones sitting there wondering when it happen, right? Like, I mean, it's happening and it's on a large scale.
Yeah.
And so seeing that aspect inside of things, and I know that there is probably another aspect that I don't feel very connected to anymore, but I mean, it's there. How do you feel? What do you think that's going to look like moving forward? Because I do feel, and some people say, well, stay away from the timeline word, but that's the only way that I can explain it.
The timeline word.
I mean, I don't know how else to explain it, but I feel like there's already two very different energies that are, inhabiting this planet. And, from a, I guess, I don't know, mathematical perspective, I don't know, energetic perspective, how are the two going to correlate? Because like attracts like.
Yeah.
So how does that,
I think, like will always attract like, but I think that the core ingredient for people to ascend to higher experience and higher dimension is the commitment to non-judgment. Judgment is the thing. I think most people believe that we come here to Earth to learn better judgment, and we call it discernment. But actually, I believe we're here to learn love. We're not here to learn more judgment. There's plenty of judgment around. And I think that's the key to being able to go to higher dimension. Once you enter into that realm of thought, then all of a sudden the other stuff that, you know, could also be, you know, done is no longer as attractive.
Well, and you brought that up actually in another interview where you were speaking again with Richard Rudd. What does he call it? The Venus keys or something like that, where
Mm-hmm.
kind of the idea is really to come here and experience the duality,
Mm-hmm.
the
We
very
learn through opposites.
situations in order to be able to, I guess, transcend them, if you will. Again, I
Mm-hmm.
probably these words that might not be you know, the right words, but yeah, I mean, you know, as far as people that are on the path or waking up to the path or wanting to kind of become more mindful of these things, what
Mm-hmm.
we do, and essentially that is really learn to sort of transcend those experiences.
Yep. Totally right. Totally right. Could not agree with you more. So it's through the learning of non-judgment that we learn to transcend. But it's hard to do. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's really not easy,
Well,
but
yeah,
it's worth it.
I mean, especially I guess when we're seeing some of these things in the world that have been,
Mm-hmm.
you know, very dark. I mean, how do you not judge, you know,
Oh yeah.
or, you know, just against, I mean,
Super dark.
so I mean, how do you, you know, how do you get to that place where you can hold that without judgment? So yes, I mean, it is very difficult.
It is. It definitely is very difficult. It's super hard. But you know, I think that's what's going to determine this stuff for us
Mhm,
and where society's going.
mhm, mhm. Okay, well, I guess on that, we'll move to, I had another lady come in and she just sort of popped into my world and she explained to me something called gematria, which I had never
Uh-huh.
heard before.
Yep. Sometimes pronounced gematria as well.
Gematria, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So would you mind talking a little bit about that and telling us all a little bit about what that is?
Sure. Gematria is when you know, actually, I'll show you something I think will be helpful because I get this question a lot. And I think this could really be a good educational opportunity. Stop this for a second and then. So there's a calculator you can go to online called Gematria
Yeah.
calculator. And I'll pull it up for you. And this is the easiest way to do it. See where it says Gematria calculator?
Oh,
Just click on that. And you could put in any name. You could even view the rude words. So my name, Robert Edward Grant. So this is the Gematria and 3 methods of Gematria.
okay.
So the lowest here is simple. The mid-size is English Gematria, right in the middle. And the Hebrew Gematria is at the beginning here. And they all have different numbers associated with them. So there's a different numbering codex associated with each of these.
Okay.
So R in, you know, English Gematria is 108, but R in Hebrew is 80. And there's some relationship as well that you can see. So 18, right, is this one, and then 15, then 2, 5, 8, 1, 8, 2, 0. Right. So these would be the way that you would convert your name into gematria or the location of your birth.
Okay.
So, and generally, I only really have to use simple gematria to do it. Simple is the best way, I think.
Okay. And what does it mean? Like, is it, how does it interact with the,
How does it mean? So, what it basically says is this, that every time a word is chosen in this U inverse of life, that word is imbued with a certain frequency associated with the meaning of that word. And so, you know, there are certain Latin names, certain French names, and then certain German names that are in the English languages. And as far as the English language goes, right? We want to make sure that people can communicate and understand each other. But you could use in ancient days this Gematria to send messages. It's like an encryption. And what people have found that are really into this stuff is that Gematria is literally interlaced in all of society.
So this is the codex kind of behind the language.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And
It's
so,
like a codex behind the language.
okay, yeah. So this is very interesting to me. And now it basically now comes up with all of these phrases and things like that on the bottom. So
Mm-hmm.
what do those mean? Like
Well,
how?
the opening of the seven seals, that's straight out of Revelations.
Yes, yes.
And so what they're doing is they're picking numbers that have the same gematria,
Okay.
same values.
Okay. Because
So
some,
Obama's worst president, and that basically comes out as 1573, 110, and 105.
okay. Very interesting. Okay. So yeah, this kind of was a neat thing that was introduced to me. I had never heard of it before.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of part of these codes and learning to understand them. And then the other thing that I had that's been coming up for me a lot was the Metatrons Cube. And you've talked about that in a couple of different ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what that is?
Sure.
Okay.
Metatron's cube is the cube that most people associate with the flower of life. So what it looks like, pull it up for you. You can see one. So this would be Metatron's cube,
Yeah.
this shape right here. And in theory, it houses within it all the platonic solids. You can draw all of the platonic solids that would have one uniform instance of a geometry shape. And so this allows you to draw pretty much every shape. And when you make a small adjustment to it, you can draw all the shapes that you couldn't draw with just the standard flower of life.
Is this also the cross opened up?
That's a good question. I mean, yes, because it's a cube. And a cube, you could say, has these six sides that then opens up to a cross shape. That is true. I'm not sure that that was the intention behind it, but could well be.
Yeah, I can see a few different things in there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Platonic solids. Okay.
Yep. So, I recently got challenged by a group of guys that do a lot of geometric work. And basically, that they were trying to, from their perspective, say that the way that you draw the Metatron's cube doesn't allow you to draw some of the higher order geometric forms in proper perspective. So Metatron. For me. Okay. So there's a bunch of posts that I've done on this, and you can find a lot about this. But I wanted to make sure that people understood that you can draw like Metatron's cube, within this. And let's see, I'm gonna have to go to YouTube to do it, I think, to show you this quick video. Here it is. Let's see. Here it is. So I had to find a new method to draw this so that you could draw every geometric form within it. And it worked. So I just discovered this a few weeks ago. So you can see this is a dodecahedron that's being drawn. And it's the perfect phi ratio dodecahedron. But I had to modify Metatrons Cube in order to make it work perfectly like this. Now it's drawing what's called an Icasi dodecahedron. So this is forming this Icasi dodecahedron. So you can see the blue is the dodecahedron, but there's also an icosahedron in there. And what was important was I had to start with a pentagon and then draw a circle outside the pentagon and then a circle inside the pentagon, and then use my cross sections of Metatrons Cube to form this. Looks like it's got a border for Metatrons Cube, and then it comes out to, you know, this form structure that allows you to get a perfect dodecahedron within it. And that was kind of the assertion that some people were saying is, oh, you can't use Metatrons Cube to draw a perfect dodecahedron, and this proved that you could.
Wow. So is this what you do on the daily?
Yes.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's incredible.
Yeah. So you'll be able to see this form here in a second. It'll come out. So you can now see that in the black lines are the icosahedron, and then this measures the backside of the pentagon. That's what this is doing right now, measuring those two lengths to see if they're the golden ratio. And indeed they are. It's exactly the golden ratio. So it kind of reminded me of what the Star of David used to always look like. It looks like there's like this interlocking triangles. And the reason for the distance that creates this distance right here between these two parts of that is because of the pentagon that's here. So the answer to fix the Metatrons Cube so that it could draw any geometric form was actually answered through the heart.
Wow. Okay.
Because the pentagon represents the heart.
Huh. Very nice. Okay. Well, there, okay. Well, that was a code for sure. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
You know, when we look at geometric forms, they actually upgrade us. We don't even realize it. It's a, in a sense, what we're looking at is a QR code for our subconscious mind.
I mean, I'm feeling it coming right through the, yeah, definitely. Wow.
And it upgrades us along the way,
Well,
which is really beautiful.
Yeah. And I guess mandalas are sort of similar, right?
Yes, absolutely.
On geometry, but more, you know, on the color scale and the way that they're sort of built out. So this is very interesting because, you know, I've been drawing mandalas most of my life. I was always, you know, sort of the artist, and where my brothers were kind of more, you know, they're more the math people. But I guess what I wondered is, you know, where do the two meet together? Right?
Where do mandalas meet? I mean, I think that, you know, it's like my sculptures. I'm a sculptor, and I don't try to achieve the golden ratio with them. It just gets achieved when I make the sculpture. When I'm in a channeling place, it just comes out as part of the structure of the sculpture. And I think that's true with everything. So when are making mandalas, we don't think we're doing mathematics, but actually we're just playing in a more tangible form of music, because music and math are the same thing. It's just one is a something that we enjoy with our ears, and the other is something we enjoy with our eyes, geometric forms, or it could be even beyond that into an abstract form, which is coming back to number. So, as an example, I made this video some time ago with Alan Green, and where I'd taken on a Mod 24 all the musical relationships and turned them into geometry so that they could be turned into music. And then we made music associated with that geometry. So have a look at this. So this is defining the major third and literally making a triangle. These are the notes of major thirds, minor thirds. So this is how geometry expresses as music. The abstraction would just be the ratios of interval. And then when you start playing this as music, you'll start to see the visual form of what you're listening to. This was a piece that Alan Green wrote just specifically for this. He impromptued it. It reminds me of that old movie, Close Encounters. And so, yeah, it's pretty cool stuff, huh?
Well, absolutely. I guess I can sort of see then, the integration between you and the sound healing, because I'm looking at this and I am really feeling this deeply in my being as I'm taking this in, right? So how do these types of codes, do they correlate with our DNA?
Yes. In fact, I wrote a new temperament of tuning on 432 called Precise Temperament, which just by listening to it was intended to, first it was derived entirely mathematically. I had no idea what I was going to sound like. And now it's kind of exploded. And there's a whole playlist on YouTube you can find. But this is it. This is like geometry is the QR code for your subconscious mind. This music in this precise temperament tuning, I believe, is like a QR code for your biology. Read the comments. magic. Even at distances between octaves, the symmetry doesn't break. This is one of the world's great pianists, Lawrence Ung, playing. Beautiful, isn't it? It's like, wow. It's almost intoxicating.
Yes, it really is. Now, what is that? What frequency was that? 420?
It's 432 hertz, which is common. People, have in the spiritual community have been switching to 432 hertz, but it's not in the standard equal temperament. Equal temperament is the separation of notes is just cutting up the octave into the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th roots of two. And that's how the separation between the notes is defined. But what I did is I defined a new approach to this, because you lose the mathematical perfection by doing this salami cutter approach, and nature doesn't do that. Nature has, it's like a snake. A snake doesn't have these perfect moves. It's more like the Fibonacci. It's not just like cookie cutter thing. So the reason why that sounds so different, it sounds so good, and why all the comments back on it are so positive. And believe me, musicians are crazy discerning on this stuff, right? So they would go and hash the hell out of the thing. But now I've got, conductors of philharmonic orchestras now trying to tune their whole orchestra to this.
Wow.
Around the world. And it's unbelievable. I can't even believe it. I'm probably more well known now for this than I am for anything I did in math.
Well, it's beautiful. I mean, wow, living in your consciousness or even trying to. Wow. It's beautiful. It's very beautiful. So on that, what about solfeggio tones? Have you played around with those?
I have. I think they play a role. One thing I found is this, it's kind of funny because there's a group that did this analysis on exactly that. And what I had done is I looked at one of the solfeggio frequencies was 528, right, which you've probably heard of. So 528 hertz. A lot of people talk about that as having certain healing properties and everything. And so I thought, well, maybe I should try 528 hertz for a C note, and then put it to precise temperament. So change it so that in the exact same way that I changed the notes, right, for 432, which has become really popular. And so there's a group in Australia that follows my work really closely. And basically they put out this, let's see if I can find it here. Maybe I have to go to, I have to go to this website. Well, let me see. Here it is, I think.
Temperament is the name.
Yeah, so this group made this whole website thing. It's called TonyMazzotti.com, and he's an Italian musician. And he made this whole thing about this. And I'm trying to find, I may have to go to his website, Tony Mazzotti. So basically, this group in Australia was analyzing it, and I took it and I said, okay, well, what if I actually take, this 432, apply it, the same concept of precise temperament, to 528. And what shocked me was what resulted from that appeared to be the same scale. Just instead of, like, the 528 fit perfectly inside the 432, like two snakes. And maybe what it's presenting to us is that the true nature of music is actually a 24 note scale that are all in quarter tones. And so if I can find this guy in his presentation on this, it was really epic because he talked about exactly that. And let's see if he says this.
So we conclude tonight on project 432.
No, not this one. Where did he put that? Wow, they've really taken this. I mean, they've really taken my work on this and just like exploded it, which is like kind of mind-boggling. And that's exactly what he was talking about, that this whole thing, he got really excited because he's like, oh wow, there's going to be now another way for us to tune music that actually takes us to a higher level of understanding with 24 notes in a scale, which was like, wow, shocking for me. And I'm not sure where he put this now, but let's see if it's in this right here.
Temperament is the name of the process to distribute.
Oh, I can't find it right now, but if I do, while we're on the course of this, I'll show you, because I think that's the answer, that 528 is actually part of the 432 scale, just in a 24 note scale. It fits perfectly within it. And that to me said so much, because it's kind of like Ida and Pingala and Shushumna. That was immediately what I saw when I kind of figured it out. I did a post on it that was on Instagram that explains this 24 note scale thing. And let's see if we can find that. Okay. Here we go. I think I got it here. Yeah. So I took this, and this is what it looked like. This post right here. So this was based on, the, expanded a bit for you. So this was a drawing that I did when I was, because that's how I get these things. They usually come in as geometric forms, and then I just start drawing them out. So I did 528 in precise temperament tuning, and I noticed that all of the notes were fitting perfectly inside of and in between, in the quarter note positions or quarter tone positions, in between the 432 Hertz notes. So it's like part of the same scale. It's just that no one knew that. And that, here's what I wrote. I said, please see my video post yesterday on 24 note quarter tone matrix that combines both 432 and 528 precise temperament tuning into one quarter tone chromatic scale. And so 528 is solfeggio. Our sexagesimal time system is also based on this, right? So I'm kind of explaining how then Euler and pi together become the foundational basis of this sort of new understanding. And I think it's all connected, right? That's the thing about it that's kind of very, very interesting. Let's see if it's on this one right here. No, it's still giving me the same one. Yeah, it's not giving me the same. I wanted to show you to this video, but I've got so much content now. It's like I need a new way to like be able to find all of it, because it's like literally impossible to find. It's so ridiculous.
Very interested to see what you do in a day. My God. Unbelievable how your brain works. And yeah, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it is, every day is something new, that's for sure. And it's beautiful. And the thing I love now is that people will grab my work and they'll take it and run with it, because I can't possibly spend time on doing all of these different things, but people get behind certain aspects of it and then just run with it and do stuff. And sometimes I'll go and file patents, and not so that I will be able to stop other people from using the technology. I don't feel like I own it. It's not mine to own. I feel like the reason why patents are necessary is because I can be protected so that I can't be blocked from using it.
Yes.
Because someone else will basically patent it and then block me from using it.
And this is all stuff you're decoding. This is all.
Yes.
Wow, I think you're one of the most brilliant people I've ever spoken with. That's
Oh,
incredible.
well, thank you.
You're blowing my mind.
Well, I think all of us have access. And I'm not joking by this. I think Walter Russell said that genius is self-bestowed and mediocrity is self-inflicted.
Mhm.
I think human beings, and you asked this at the very beginning of the call, are we going through this shift? I believe we're transitioning from, Homo sapiens to, as Richard Rudd puts it, Homo sanctus is what he calls it now. Or I've also heard it referred to as Homo luminous, that there's a light within us and that we're finding this light and we're remembering who we are. And as we do, we're unlocking all these aspects of ourselves we never even knew existed.
Well, I think I've heard that in different ways. Some may say it was the original angelic DNA that we had, and then maybe was shifted over time, and that we're coming back into that. Or, as Richard had said, but I definitely believe that there's something happening, and it's not always easy to figure it out. But I think by sharing with each other and just exchanging, we're all kind of co-creating, or it's all happening as a collective, which is really neat, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
So it is very exciting.
And I wanted to bring this up. This was, I think, your post from yesterday. You said, life starts as a sphere. It's a maternal egg before birth. Then from the binary division, multiplication times 2 characteristic of mitosis. I'm sorry if I'm...
Mitosis, cellular mitosis.
Okay. Yeah, the process. It becomes a structure of a double torus with 2 cells, with 4 cells, and then it becomes a so-called egg of life of spheres. That the cells are constantly dividing at an incredible rate to maintain the highly complex and dynamic structure of the living organism, following the dynamics of the expansion of the flower of life.
Yeah.
That was really cool. That's a really
Yeah, the visual is cool because you could see the flower of life in action in our cellular biology. I mean, literally, it's like this egg that then separates into 2 and then just keeps separating. And when you think about it, it's like the one divided itself into the many simply for the joy of becoming one again. And I wrote something, and that was a quote by Emily Fletcher, but I wrote something on my Instagram today, which was, I would tear myself in 2 simply for the purpose, or just for the purpose of meeting you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a much deeper thing than what it sounds like, right? That the one separates itself into this differentiation so that it can experience itself through our eyes.
Yeah.
Which is like really beautiful, and in a way that then lends credence and lends purpose to all of our existence.
Well, and then the coming back of oneness, which I guess is that sort of unity consciousness. Right? So so you talk about it sort of coming down and then sort of resurrecting,
Yeah.
back to, but wouldn't it be wonderful able to resurrect back to that consciousness and still have the ability to have our, physical forms, I guess, right? Or the, the body, right?
Absolutely.
That would be pretty awesome. And I feel like that's happening, when I'm connecting with people, I kind of go, okay, well, I know you. I've known you for a very long time. I don't know how I know you.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
And again, it's that energetic pull. So when you talk about the egg, how I would understand that would be, okay, for example, let's say source, or and how
Mm-hmm.
I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
It is, let's say, mother, father type of figure. Okay. And then it's
Right.
self out, right? And now
Mm-hmm.
it creates twins over here and twins over here, and and then it just kind of keeps kind of creating itself over and over and multiplying.
Mm-hmm.
Then if it's sort of, then how do we, I guess, what's the opposite of that? Is going back to that unity piece.
Coming
But
back into unity, back into singularity. Mm-hmm.
yeah, but then normally the only way to do that would be to leave the body, I would think. But I believe that's different now. I believe that we actually have an opportunity at this time to be able to actually get to that point where we're all coming back into source in our own separate.
I believe so too. I definitely do. And I think, a lot of the things that we thought were impossible to think or to dream are now being proven possible.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's kind of funny. We keep learning now that science, and I'm not a fan of scientism. I'm a fan of science. I'm not a fan of scientism. And I think what we all have to realize is the only constant that we experience here in this experience of life is change itself. And the things that we once thought were true, maybe they were partially true. Maybe what we had collected as facts were actually just facets of a larger truth.
Maybe it's up to us to really come back as well as creators, come back into the idea that we're creating. We're not stuck in something else, that we really have the ability to kind of create whatever it is.
We're creating our entire reality. We are the masters of our fate and the captains of our soul. I'm sure of that. We just don't know it. We're like God playing hide and go seek.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, it's it's exciting. It's been an interesting journey, and I'm very excited. I feel like it's all coming into a very beautiful place, and I would say that I'm in a place where I'm just very grateful for the day, living in a peaceful spot, and I have my garden and I have my things that I'm doing, and that's all I need, where I think in the other perspective, I was always working very hard and going and missing everything along the way, right?
Isn't that so true? Oh my gosh. Me too. Me too. I felt exactly the same way. It was like all the great stuff of life is happening all around us, but we have to stop and notice it
Yeah.
and pay attention to it. And you can find bliss in looking at a flower. You can find bliss and it's not by human doing, it's by human being.
Yes. Get a paddleboard, get yourself a garden, you're good. No.
Yeah, totally.
Life is beautiful. Yeah, no, I mean, I just, I think that being in presence, being in the moment,
Yep.
having that gratitude, and just, life becomes very synchronistic. It becomes very beautiful. I think this is happening to more and more. And, I think as it happens, as we collectively sort of shift, and we're all getting to that point, more and more are getting to that point. And I mean, it's almost like, I feel like a different person now, so to speak, than my earthly experience. I don't know what happened. One day a light went on here, I'm different now. So that's the way it is. But I really think that it's time. And a lot of people kind of get, whoa, like what is this? What are they talking about? Well, I mean, this has been prophesized for a very, very long time.
Oh yeah, it has been. It definitely has been.
People think,
So
I think,
like,
what's new about it? It's not.
right. No, it's been happening for a long time. There's no doubt. It's like we just are kind of waking up to it now. It's this is we're just on a clock, and the clock is going forward as it's supposed to. And we're all just waking up on the exact timeline that we intended to. And if we're not, that's okay. You didn't choose to.
That's right.
Because everything that happens to us in this world, what we think of as destiny is really just the free will of our higher selves. And we are that.
It's
And you know, it's the expression of love. When the expression of love actually supersedes the desire for the truth, that's when things really start to accelerate in a beautiful way in your life.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very grateful. I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed that you took the time to spend with me today. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
That. And I guess my last question, talking about the DNA. Now, I just want to come back to this. Curious, maybe you know, maybe you don't. Apparently, obviously we're born with, what is it, two strands, and then now some people are talking about 12 strands. Some people are
12 strand.
4, and that we can actually shift our DNA or change our DNA or elevate our DNA. Do you believe that's a possibility to do that?
Yeah. I believe that. So first of all, you have to understand that there's a way to think about this and how to visualize this. So you could look at DNA as being dodecahedra that are stacked on top of each other, literally stacked on top of each other. But there's no such thing as a dodecahedron without an icosahedron that it's married to. So the masculine has its feminine associated with it. And the way you find that is you take the center of a dodecahedron, and the dodecahedron is just the shape that I showed in the one earlier video. And if you just take the center point of that shape and you connect the center points of each of the pentagon sides of that shape, it will form an icosahedron. Okay. So because the icosahedron it's inherent to the dodecahedron, you cannot have a dodecahedron without having the icosahedron. The icosahedron represents water. It's how water clusters together. So the dodecahedron represents fire, spirit, ether, and then you've got spirit combining with water. It's always been connected. So when we look at our DNA, we think it's all dodecahedron, but it's as equally dodecahedron and icosahedron, water. So it has to come into our consciousness that we now understand this. Once our consciousness is there, then it begins to manifest in our life. As soon as we realize that the icosahedron is part of that structure, and then therefore water is that structure, most of what we consider DNA is the water substrate that it is. It's all based on water. You can't have DNA without water. And as a result, once you start to become aware of this, then that water becomes spirit water. That relationship becomes like spirit water. And as a result of that spirit water, then you start to get another structure that forms inside of that. So the thing that forms inside of that is what's called a Dürer solid. And the dihedral angle of that corners of that Dürer solid is 108 degrees. So water has a dihedral angle when you look at it as a vapor versus looking at it as, like ice crystals, right? And so what we see is that there's a different change in the dihedral angle as you change the phase transitions of water. But the average between the 111.4 degrees of vapor and 104.5 degrees as liquid, the average is 108 degrees. The mean is exactly 108 degrees. 108 is that inner dihedral angle that matches the moon, because the moon has a 1,080 mile radius, right? And so we already know that water and the moon has some connection to it because the moon is sort of managing the tides of the earth, right? So it's all connected in this beautiful metaphorical and physical way. It's not only metaphysical and metaphorical, it's actually in a physical way too. So as such, when we start to realize that our DNA is embedded in that water, then it starts to light up, right? And as it lights up, it takes on an entirely new structure. And this is where, you know, kind of like the different artwork that I've done is basically going, right? So it's like, if you look up on my Instagram channel, Robert Edward Grant, and you would find a bunch of artwork related to DNA, right? And 12-strand DNA in particular.
Okay. Oh, my gosh. Sorry, the phone just, oh, there's a bad frequency. Okay.
Here you go. I'll show you the picture of what I mean. So this is, you could see the icosahedron inside here. Do you see this? Inside this structure right here, do you see the shape of this icosahedron?
Yes.
Right, there's an icosahedron right here, but there's a dodecahedron right here. And they're all stacked on top of each other. Well, actually, this is an icosahedron inside here. It's both. And so what's happening with our DNA, our perception has been that it's only dodecahedra. It's not. It's both. It's the icosahedron.
Could that also be, that could also be energetic, like a Kundalini type of energy?
It is. That's exactly what it is. And so let's say we take the dodecahedron and we rotate the dodecahedron stacked like that. That will only give you, because of the protrusions, the number of protrusions, the corners on this dodecahedral structure, like this one right here, and this one right here, and this one, it's only going to give you a 2-strand DNA. But when you realize that the icosahedron is part of it, then the number of protrusions in that rotated combination icosahedron gives you a 12-strand DNA. There are 12 strands already inherent to our DNA. It's just we've been limiting our view of it because we didn't understand that the icosahedron was already part of the dodecahedron. And that's how consciousness works. Things don't come into view for us until we start to become consciously aware of it. That's why geometry becomes so important, because it starts to activate us, right? It starts to turn us on. So this is another way of looking at it right here. So I've taken here those same protrusions. So here's the dodecahedron right here, and I've drawn a line for each one of those protrusions as I'm rotating this. Well, when you include the icosahedron also inside here, here's the icosahedron, then you've got, you know, you can start counting it up. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it becomes a 12-strand within that one cluster, because that's the number of protrusions that operate within this. And the Merkaba is the structure that creates all of it around it. These Merkabas are all just stacked into each other. That's what this larger structure is here.
Is that, would that be considered, like, would that add up to 144 in the?
Yes, it would. I mean, if you would have 12. So 12 of these icosahedrons would give you 144 positions. So yes, it definitely is related to that. And it's all music at the end of the day. It comes down to a musical matrix. Our DNA itself is just like music. That's why we're so sensitive to music and frequency. And as we go to higher levels of ascendancy, then our perceptions start to expand. And then you can start doing artwork that you never thought you could do before.
Yeah.
Like if you would have said to me a few years ago that I could draw this in this very 3-dimensional view, which is very difficult to do, I would have said, are you kidding me? I would never be able to do that. And it's all about unlocking the potential within ourselves and starting to move away from judgment. We're not here to learn more judgment. We're here to learn how to love.
Wow, this is, oh, this one on the sort of rainbow colored one.
DNA. Mhm.
Is that DNA that you're,
That's DNA. Yeah, this is DNA.
oh no, not that one. Sorry. If we could go back there just for a moment. There was one that was really calling out to me.
Which one?
We might have missed it now. It was a cross. It looked like a cross. If it's on your,
Hmm.
we may have missed it, but it's just interested in what you'd have to say about that one. It looks almost like a cross that you had made.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah, that was a flower of life
Okay.
that turned into the prime number pattern. So I published a paper
Okay.
on that, which basically creates this cross shape. And it's right here. It's on my website.
Yeah, that's it.
So in mod 24, this is how I discovered how to predict prime numbers infinitely. Right here. So all the red numbers were prime numbers. All the green numbers were a new type of number we discovered called quasi-prime. And all of the yellow numbers are only in this one spoke right here are all prime squared. And every prime number squared beyond 3 will square to a number that is a multiple of 24 plus 1 without exception.
Wow.
So 5 times 5 is prime, 5 times 5 is 25. That's 1 times 24 plus 1. So 7 is the next prime. 7 times 7 is 49. That's 2 times 24 plus 1. So we discovered a 24ness in prime numbers. It's not supposed to have a pattern. We found the pattern. And
Wow.
that's true infinitely.
Wow. Very cool. Hmm. Well, you have been such a wealth of information and codes today. So again, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For anybody who is interested, I'll make sure that I leave all of Robert's information below, as well as the links to the books and a couple of other links there. I think you have some programs that you're offering, or
Yes, I do courses. My courses, one of them's called Etymology of Number. The other one's called Language of Light. You can find it on my website. Also, I do trips to Egypt and stuff, and we discover a lot of stuff on these trips. And they're kind of life-changing events for people that go. I don't only go to Egypt. I also go to like Mexico and ancient sites in Peru and Turkey and Israel. And they're like super fun adventure Indiana Jones style trips.
you're
So-
kind of like Indiana Jones. So totally see that. Well, I'll actually have to look into those. Those sound kind of fun. All right. Well, I will make sure that everybody does get your information. And again, thank you. And there you go, guys. A lot to get your head around, but all good stuff.
Have a good day, everyone. All right. See you
Take
later.
care.
Bye-bye.